signed a client that was going to pay us $24,000 for a 6-month project. And my boss at the time said, Katie, that's lovely, but it's not going to close the massive budget deficit that we have. So we're not going to do that. And I'm like, well, that will close my household deficit. So I'm going to do it on the side. And she was like, yeah, sure, no problem. I just kept getting more and more clients on the side. And I would only work before work or after work and on weekends, or I would take vacation. So I was really intentional about not doing my side hustle during the day. They sent everybody a letter. Here's an offer that will pay you not to come back July 1. And it's like, well, if you're looking for a sign, here's a contract buyout, take it. And it's been the biggest gift. I tell people I've never had more pressure on me in my life, but I've also never slept better because I'm living my passion.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun at all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today, Jeff is interviewing Dr. Katie Ervin. Katie has more than 25 years of experience in helping individuals and organizations achieve their full potential. She is the founder and CEO of Catalyst Development, a company that is rooted in intentional workforce skill building at all stages and levels. Prior to starting her own company, Katie was Associate Vice President at Park University and Adjunct Professor at Baker University and Webster University. She was also a Human Resources Director for several companies in a variety of industries. She has a Doctorate of Educational Leadership from Kansas State University. You can learn more about Katie at katieervin.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Katie.
Katie, welcome to the Corporate Couch today.
Jeff, thanks for having me.
Yeah, very excited to talk to you. What I love about, and I know you have your own podcast also, what I love about talking to people is this, the career journeys are so different. I mean, there's similarities, but I'm fascinated by yours. So and obviously we love culture, company culture, and building great ones, and leadership development. So yeah, we're going to have a fun time today. So very excited about that. So fun question. Even people that know you fairly well, what one thing about you would surprise them?
Yeah, this is a fun question. Kind of a not so hidden secret is I was a surrogate twice. So I carried twins and I carried a single. And so the twins are 12 and live in Geneva, Switzerland. And then the single is 8 and lives in, I know that's a big one. You're like stunned.
Wow.
I loved being pregnant. I was a really great pregnant woman. My husband says I was nicer pregnant than not.
Which is rare.
Right. And we had some friends who had struggled, and his sister had struggled with her journey to become a mother. And so it was something I always wanted to do. And my husband's like, figure it out. So I was just the oven, but we're still in contact with them. And it's just, so that's kind of something I don't talk about a lot, but I'm so proud to have grown families.
Wow. That's just, talking about giving. That's, you gave up, 18 months of your life, the two twins, or the twins, and then the other one. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, phenomenal.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because you have to explain to everybody around you. And at the time, my kids were very little. So you have to explain to them where babies come from. And then you have to explain to them where these babies come from. And then you have to explain to everybody else where these babies come from. But it was an awesome journey, and people are amazingly supportive. Even work was amazingly supportive through this whole thing.
Well, congratulations. You're the first guest out of about 80 on the Corporate Couch to be a surrogate mother. So congratulations for that accolade. Wow, that's wow. Yeah, it's great. So, where'd you grow up, and what was fun for you growing up?
Yeah, so I was an Army brat. I was born in Hawaii. So if you ever fly into the big island of Hawaii and see a pink hospital, that's Tripler Hospital, and that's where I was born. My dad was in the Army, so lived all over, which was really, I think, so instrumental in who I am today because, back in my day, and I'm sure your day as well, I mean, we didn't have social media, we didn't have anything. So, like, you had to write letters to keep up with people. And so we would move around every 3 to 4 years. Lived in Germany, several stints in Germany, and kind of all over. But it was an adventure. But to keep up with people, you had to write letters. You had to be real intentional in relationship building.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I grew up in I'll say, kind of a lower middle class environment. So we did not travel, but I think it's so important for kids to travel if they have the means to do that. Especially in going overseas or to a non-U.S. State. But yeah, so what was it? I mean, so you're going from base to base. I mean, what was that like for you as a child? Like, did you embrace it, or was it hard to make new friends? I mean,
Well, and it's interesting because on military bases, everyone travels around. So as long as you're staying on base, and it's interesting because it feels like these days, a lot of people in the military don't live on base; they live off base. And I just think for the kids that can be a challenge. But when you live on base, it's overall very secure. You get on your bikes and you leave in the morning. You come back when the street lights are on, and so it's a very close community and it's very welcoming. And your parent who's in the military, you automatically have built-in friends because they have all the people that they're working with in their unit. And what's really fascinating about the military, and even still today, um, it people just keep coming back around. And so you may see somebody at a station in Alabama. We were at Redstone Arsenal, and then 2 stations later, we were in Stuttgart, Germany. And so, some of those friends came back around because my dad was, he had the same kind of military speak MOS as other people, so which is their focus of work. And so, you would have the same people kind of come around because everyone comes in at the same time. Um, so so it was easier to make friends, but then it kind of forced you to make friends. You had no choice. You had 3 years here, so you had to dig in and have fun.
did you have any aspirations as a child? Like, when I'm an adult, I'm going to do this for a living.
Yes, I wanted to be a truck driver. I thought that was the coolest job in the whole wide world. And you have to keep in mind, we did not live close to my grandparents who lived in Kansas City. We lived a lot of my childhood, we lived in Alabama. And so we would drive from Alabama to Kansas City. And so I would see these truck drivers and these cool trucks. I'm 5'2", so I'm short. So I have short girl complex on top of it all. So I wanted doing these big trucks. I wanted to travel around. I wanted to see the world. And then you get to stop at all these truck stops and get snacks all the time. And our family rule was truck stop snacks don't count. So if you're a trucker, then they really don't count.
Right.
So yeah, I wanted to be a trucker until I was probably 7th or 8th grade.
That's great. And Katie, you can still pursue that dream. You don't have to give it up. I mean, you could still be a truck driver.
Yeah, my husband has aspirations of selling everything and buying an RV, and I'm like, I don't think so. Now I just want to live on a cruise ship.
There you go. Yeah, I love that. So you go to Pittsburgh State University in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and you graduated with a BS in sociology. Was that your beginning major when you entered as a freshman? And if so, why did you pick sociology?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was my beginning major. I didn't know a lot about sociology, but I had done a lot of research because what I wanted to do is I wanted to go into the FBI. My dad was the chief of hazardous devices at Redstone Arsenal, and every year the FBI guys at the time, they were all guys, would come through to be retrained. And so I spent a lot of time with these guys in the FBI. And so I wanted to be an FBI agent. And I thought I would do that by going pre-law and going that route. And for whatever research I did at the time told me that sociology with a minor in psychology was the right route. It was an awesome degree, and I still use it today. I just use it for a different reason instead of using it to go pre-law. That very quickly was squashed with my first law class that I took at Pittsburgh.
Yeah, this is going to sound crazy too, because when you talk about sociology, I took it freshman or sophomore year. I was a business major, and Dr. Mary Groves was my professor, and I had one semester of it, but I still remember it. I did like the class, so yeah. And you're right, you do use it. I would say you're probably maybe 5% of the guests have gone right after college to pursue their masters. What was your kind of thought process, at 22 years old to do that?
Yeah, and it's fascinating because what's so interesting is I changed my major in my master's degree, which I think is even smaller percentage of people that do that. But I'll never forget, I was sitting at the sorority house at Pitt State last semester of my senior year, and it was like, okay, now you have to grow up. Like you have to buy your own laundry detergent and like make decisions and be an adult. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And my mentor, Dan Stoker, who was our Greek advisor at the time, he was like, you're so involved and you love everything about student affairs. Have you ever thought about going into student affairs? It would make sense. And so I had thought about it. I loved my sorority experience at Pittsburgh State. I was homecoming chair and I was in student government and I did all kinds of things that I think really made me an all-around engaged student, and I love that experience. So I went to Indiana State for a master's in student affairs, and I was the fraternity grad assistant my first year at Indiana State, and very quickly realized, oh, I do not want to do this. It's really fun when you're living it. It's not really fun to get the calls at 2 a.m. So-and-so did something dumb, and now you're the adult that has to take care of it. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then I won't say his name, but I had this professor that I still appreciate today. He called me at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning and he said, I'm calling everybody and I want to know what you're doing right now. Well, I am 22 years old. I am sleeping. I am in bed. And he was like, you have a paper on Monday. You need to get up and you need to get that paper written.
Wow.
And it's like, huh. Okay. And he said, Katie, you're a little soft. You should really maybe look into human resources. I didn't know what human resources was. And I could not believe the gall of this guy to be calling everybody. And so once we all woke up and a bunch of us in class got together and had lunch, some people saw it as inspiration to do better. And I thought, who do you think you are? And then I talked to my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, and he was like, you would be really good in human resources. You really should go talk to them. So after my first semester of my master's program, I switched over to HR, and it was such a gift that this really horrible professor gave to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I'm still very thankful for him. I can see his face and his name, and it's just one of those things that I just think he doesn't really know the path that he sent me on, and I'm so thankful for it. But the audacity of this man.
Did that 6 a.m. phone call also wake up your then boyfriend, now husband?
Were you kidding?
We could take
Plead the
that out.
fifth.
We could take that out. Or maybe not.
I think everybody knew. It's so funny because we met at I was dating a track coach who is still one of our close friends, but I was dating Mark, and I met my husband, Rob, at one of Mark's parties. And from that moment on, Rob and I were inseparable. Like it was just this meant to be together kind of thing. And so it happened very quickly, which was really awesome.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so then you graduate with a master's in HR. So that's great. How did you get your first job post graduate school, and what was the job?
Yeah, so I was the HR assistant at the Indiana Hand Center in Indianapolis. About halfway through my master's program, Rob and I got engaged, and he was he was the sports information director at Indiana State. And he's like, I don't want to do this my whole life. I don't want to do this. And so he went into finance, which was a journey that took us to Indianapolis. So like we got engaged on a Saturday, and then on Monday we moved to Indianapolis, and I fell into a part-time job working at the Indiana Hand Center. So I would work 3 days a week as an HR assistant, and then 2 days a week I would drive an hour and a half back to Terre Haute to finish my classes. And then when I graduated, it went to a full-time job at the Indiana Hand Center. And the cool thing was I was a generalist, so I just did a little bit of everything in HR and was able to kind of dip my toes all over the work that I'd been studying.
Yeah, interesting. So, when break down your career and when I look at it, and I think it's in your bio also, you spent about the first 11, 12 years in kind of the HR realm for different companies, and then the next 11 years in higher education. Did you have a career strategy early on, or just, like most of the guests, they don't, and it just
Yeah.
evolves that way. But I'm curious what your journey was.
Yeah, it's interesting because my master's research is all about career ladders and how we improve retention and improve employee experience by having these kind of career plans and career ladders. And so I thought I had a plan. And you know what they say, when you have a plan, God laughs. And it's so true. Like I had this plan and I was moving up in my HR career. And then my husband got laid off and I should say, I'm a big listen to the universe. The universe is telling you what you're supposed to be doing. And so on a Wednesday, my husband got laid off. So it was on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, we found out I was pregnant with our firstborn. And then on Thursday, my grandfather, who was here in Kansas City, got sick and went into Research Hospital. And as soon as my grandpa got sick, he was my hero, he was my heaven, he was my North Star. I told my boss in Indianapolis, like, I've got to go home to be with my grandpa. I'll be back as soon as I can. And they were very supportive. And I came to Kansas City and I sat with my grandfather in Research Hospital for 3 weeks. And he was in and out of consciousness. And finally, I leaned down and said, it's okay. You can go. I will move back and I will take care of grandma. And I mean, before the words fully came out of my mouth, he passed peacefully. And I was like, oh boy, okay, now I've got to call my new husband and tell him that I've made this commitment to my now dead grandfather. And I called Rob and said, we're moving to Kansas City. And he was like, that's perfect. I don't have a job. You're pregnant.
Wow.
Figure it out. So before I left Kansas City to go back home, I had secured a job here in Kansas City. Went back to Indianapolis, we packed up and moved here. So it was kind of the universe was telling us what we needed to do for our family.
Wow. That's incredible. Obviously you loved your grandfather. What impact and what lessons did he give you?
Yeah, I mean, he was the kindest, sweetest man, but had very high expectations. He didn't mess around. He owned an accounting firm here in Kansas City, and he was one of those people where he took his job very serious, but he would also be there for anyone. And so very early on in life, like at Christmas every year, I had 13 cousins and four aunts and uncles, and then their spouses. And so every year at Christmas, he would hand out these envelopes. And when we got into our teenage years and the cousins got older, we'd start bringing friends around, and whether it was boyfriends or partners or just friends, and he wouldn't necessarily know they were coming to dinner. And by the time he handed out envelopes, there would be an envelope for that friend. Like he never wanted anyone to be left out. He never wanted anyone to feel like they weren't a part of the family. And so he just was always that tender, kind heart with very high expectations. He expected us to give our best and to be our best. And he would not settle for anything less, which is amazing. And so when it was funny, I tell my son all the time, like, I really believe that my son caught my grandfather's spirit when we were in the room when he passed, because I was pregnant with Drew. And so Drew's middle name is Clancy, which is my grandfather's middle name. But they're so similar. Sometimes Drew's
Wow.
now 22, and there'll be things that Drew will say or do. And I'm like, you're your grandpa Floyd. Like, you have his spirit without even knowing him.
What were some of your big lessons in your kind of HR journey? What were your big takeaways on leadership and company cultures? And
I think the biggest lesson I learned was when I was HR director at the Hotel Phillips. And actually, it's so funny because now, having my own company, I use so much of the curriculum that I created back then, like 16, 17 years ago, because, when you work in hospitality, when you work in some of these kind of more challenging areas and industries to hire and to retain employees, they're lower level positions, they're lower paid positions. They're oftentimes unappreciated positions. And I learned very quickly at the Hotel Phillips that it really truly is all about the people. And it's when you create an environment where people feel cared for and they have an opportunity to be successful, they're going to be more loyal to you. And so, yes, we would all love to make $1 million a year. But if we can have a loving, caring work environment, people will stay loyal to you. And so at the Hotel Phillips, I was able to create programs and training and resources and support where our turnover went from 172%, which is almost 2 to 1 for every position yearly, to under 40%, which is in hospitality a really amazing number. But it wasn't because we did pay increases, it's because we implemented programs that showed our employees that we truly, really cared about them. Um, and then today we do a program called Leaders, and it's, giving people the skills at all different levels. And I created that at the Hotel Phillips, and I've just kind of perfected it over the years.
did you have a mentor, whether a teacher, a book, anyone that kind of drove and kind of built the foundational principles of your own philosophy in that area?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had someone ask me this question recently, like, who's your mentors? And I'm like, gosh, I don't really have any. And she said, because you don't need them. And I'm like, oh, no, I need them very, very badly. I need mentors very badly. For me, early in my career, I learned a lot from the mistakes I made and the mistakes that other people made. At the Indiana Hand Center, I worked for an HR manager who was so unethical and so immoral and I mean just made the worst decisions. And she's actually the reason why I left, is because she was doing some stuff that was unethical. And I called my brand new husband and was like, I think I gotta leave because of what she's doing. And he's like, all right, I'm in your corner. And so I went to the managing partners and said, here's what the HR director's doing, I don't agree with it, and I'm leaving. And so for me, I learned a lot from the mistakes that I've made and that other people have made. I do love Patrick Lencioni's writings. I think it's so common sense. And so I've learned a lot and taken a lot from the books that he's written. But I will say probably like my North Star is my grandfather, Floyd. I mean, he's the one that how you treat people and how you show up for people is the way that they will treat and show up for you.
Yeah, 100%. And it looked like while you were in your HR space, you got into some adjunct professorship at Webster. So what was your drive to start teaching?
I kept getting pulled to training and development. I kept getting pulled over to, helping people get to that next level in life. And I kind of met this random person that was like, "Hey, we need someone to teach us HR class." And at Fort Leavenworth, I love Fort Leavenworth. They have so many people that can teach leadership and management and all kinds of things like that. But they had a real shortage on people that could teach HR classes because you needed at least a master's in HR. And so I jumped in and taught a class. I mean, I fell in love with teaching. I fell in love with Webster, and spent a whole lot of time up there teaching. And then eventually, when I decided I didn't want to do HR anymore, it was really because I was being pulled from Webster to take a bigger role. It was, we have this opportunity. Are you interested? And it's like, yes, I don't want to deal with the minutia of HR anymore. I want to deal with the helping people get to the next level in their career, whatever that looks like for them. So it was just a very natural jump for me to make. And I had such a deep relationship with Webster that it was very easy for me to make it.
This is my opinion on this, but I've worked for about 11, 12 companies. I think it's very rare for an HR executive or person to kind of, they seem very risk adverse. They don't want to make mistakes, and they just, it's status quo versus innovation. I don't, obviously you have the HR background, you have a master's, but just curious about your opinion in that area, and what you've seen.
I think a lot of HR people want to be innovative. And I think a lot of people want to do interesting and new and great things. Um, there's probably a couple things holding them back. One is the fear of the risk, whether it be their own internal fear or their employment attorney, or, I get questions all the time like, can we get sued for this? Well, you can get sued for anything. It's whether they can win or not. But so often in our HR programs, we're taught, stay out of court, stay out of court, and it's like, well, but if you're doing the right thing, everything can be defended, everything can be justified. And so my guiding principles are, if I can tell a judge, if I can tell the news, and if I can tell my family the decision I made, then I'm going to move forward with that decision with confidence. But I think so many HR people are afraid of that. I think also a lot of HR people have a list of about 80 things on their plate that they're dealing with. They rarely have enough time or resources or opportunities to put the programs in place that they want to do. And often they get caught up in the minutia. Even the executives in HR get caught in the minutia of the running the business, because HR is so unique. They know every piece of the business. Now, they may not know that intimately, but they know all the departments, they know the makeup, they know, the people, they know the personalities, they know all of this stuff. And so they get caught in the minutia of the day to day because they're the ones that really have their, hopefully, fingers on the pulse of the organization. So they don't have a lot of time to like lift their head up and really do this intentional forward thinking that they really crave to do, but they just don't necessarily have the space to do it.
Just like I said, my experience has been, I mean, yeah, there's been some great HR people I've worked with for sure, but I just think the majority, are just that. And yeah, they got a lot to do. And yeah, it's always about legal, and you're dealing with people's benefits and pay and terminations. And, there's a lot of different, and HR is big, right? You can be just a benefit specialist or a talent acquisition. And, so it's, there's a lot of different roles in it. And it's like any other discipline, if you have a great leader of that discipline, you're going to do great things. So that's.
Yeah. And I tell people, I mean, that's truly why I started my company, was because I got so frustrated sitting in that chair, and I'd have a list of, 70 to-dos that I need to do. And then I get pulled into the craziest conversations of something, and it's like, okay, well, that to-do is going to have to wait until next Tuesday. And so you can never get to that to-do list because you're constantly being pulled into these other conversations. And in human resources, hate this phrase, but it's true, you have to have a seat at the table, because what happens is IT, accounting, products, whoever have great intentions. Hey, we're going to change the way we do this whole process. But they don't think about the impacts on others. And I have this conversation even with my husband all the time. He works at Smithfield Foods, and he'll say, well, this person did this. And I'm like, I wonder what pressure they're going through. I wonder what they're experiencing. And that's my HR intuition. It's my HR heart to say, instead of, they're a bad person, or they made a bad decision, or, they didn't even consult me, to think, what are they going through? What's the pressures that they have on them? And so when HR is sitting at the table, when decisions are made, we can say, hey, have we thought about the impact on the employees? Have we thought about the impact on, if accounting changes this process, have we thought about the impact on logistics? Have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? And so it's being able to pull all those together. And that's heavy weight for HR. But then it's an even heavier weight if we're not a part of the decision at the beginning. And so if HR is not in the room when big decisions are made, we're left cleaning up the mess, whether it be a mass exodus, whether it be disengaged employees, whether it be hurt feelings, whether it be silos of people fighting against each other. Then it's HR's role to, put it all back together, which is a massive responsibility and challenge for HR people who really they're second line managers. So they have their team that reports to them, but I don't have authority over the accounting department, but I have influence over the accounting department.
In terms of, your Webster and Park University experience, what were your kind of big takeaways in that higher education space, Katie?
It's funny. I tell people, I've been to the pinnacle of higher ed. I have my doctorate, and I value the experiences that I've gotten from higher ed. I also know that higher ed is not for everybody. The archaic, institutionalized ways of thinking in a lot of higher ed institutions is what's going to eventually kill them. I worked at Webster, and it was like constant innovation. How do we do things differently? How do we move things forward? And they didn't always make the right decisions, but I really feel like they tried to be innovative. I see so many higher ed institutions that are like, you know what? We're $13 million in debt. Well, we're just going to keep doing what we've always done. Then you're going to always get what you've always gotten. And so that fear of innovation, that fear of moving forward, that fear of taking risks is what's going to eventually kill some of the smaller higher ed institutions, which breaks my heart because there's amazing faculty and staff and administration out there. But also the way the world is today. Like my daughter, she's a sophomore at University of Mobile, and she's studying biology and marine science. And she needs that degree. Like to do the sciences, the hard sciences, she needs that degree. It's so important for her eventual research and work that she's going to do. My son dropped out of college, and we're so proud of him for that because college isn't for everybody. And we tell people that they have to do this and they have to do that, and at what cost? And for him, it was the mental health cost. But for other people, it's a lot of other costs. He's so blissfully happy because he is now working at Argosy Casino. He does surveillance. He loves it. I mean, the kid wakes up he's 22. He wakes up at 4:15 a.m. every morning and is at Argosy for his 5 a.m. shift and loves it. He's so blissfully happy, but he would have never found that if he would have continued to sit in a classroom and been miserable.
I totally agree. I think, previous generations like ours, I think, the college was really the only way to advance in your career and start your professional career. But there is just so many ways to learn a skill today with, there's no reason not to know about anything really, honestly. And I totally agree. College is not for everyone. It's becoming cost prohibitive. And I think, just like corporate America, I think higher education was, greatly impacted by COVID and changed the mindset of both, corporate America as well as the higher ed because, it's just so expensive to invest in a college education. And 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, they can start a business and and start driving revenue. And you don't need to go to MBA school. You could, or college with a business. I mean, you could just start a business and make money.
Yeah.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Exec HQ, a C-suite fractional firm providing elite executives for your business. If you're having challenges taking your business to the next level, if you want to augment your leadership team, or prepare your company for increased growth, profitability, and an eventual successful exit, we have seasoned executives from every C-suite position ensuring a perfect fit for your needs and the dynamics of your industry. You will work with senior leaders who like to roll up their sleeves while checking their egos at the door. They can help your business in specific services such as strategic planning, executive leadership coaching, financial management, corporate governance, marketing, sales management, and many other advisory solutions vital to your business success. That's exechq.com. To learn more, go to exechq.com or email Jeff Palacio at jeff.palacio@exechq.com.
And we're doing a lot of research right now on the different generations, and in particular, Generation Z. And I love this generation. They are fascinating. And for the employers and, quite frankly, the higher ed institutions that really lean into the uniqueness of Gen Z, they're going to thrive because Gen Z wants to learn. They want to grow. They want these kind of guardrails and to understand the whys of things. And so when we can do kind of short form learning, when we can do smaller certificates, they'll show up. But you have to be innovative and you have to listen to what they really want. And I won't get fully on my generation soapbox, but it's so important for us to not say, well, in my day, but let's understand it's today and what does this generation need, and let's show up for them.
To go back to your doctorate, so you decided to get a doctorate in educational leadership. What was the impetus behind that decision?
Yeah, it was funny. I was working in K through 12 at the time, and I really loved K through 12. I was the HR director at Leavenworth School District, but I was coming across all these people in Leavenworth that had their doctorates. And I was kind of at this road where it was like, do I have my master's in human resources development? Do I get an MBA or do I get a doctorate? What does this feel like? I was also teaching at Webster at the time, so I was kind of wrestling with it. And then it sounds horrible. I was telling someone this recently and it sounds horrible. I came across this person with their PhD and I thought, if you have a PhD, I should have 3. Like, literally, you're an idiot. And so the universe, I was up at Fort Leavenworth teaching my class and I came across who eventually became a mentor for me, Dr. Cheryl. She worked for K-State. And I said, hey, are you guys getting ready to start another doctoral cohort? And she said, yeah, we have a class starting in 2 days. You'd be perfect for it. And I kind of looked at it and thought, well, that's in line with what I want to do when I grow up, and let's do this. And so I called my mom because she had kind of talked about it also. And I said, hey, we start class on Wednesday. I have the books coming on Amazon, and yeah, we're starting our doctoral program. Get your application submitted. And it was just this like, so we do working genius at Catalyst Development, and discernment is one of my geniuses where I trust my gut. And if it feels right, I just go, which makes my husband sweat a lot because I'll start a doctoral program on a whim.
Yeah.
But it was such a gift. I mean, everything that I do and everything that I've done in my career is rooted really in my doctoral work that I did.
Yeah, and how different was getting your doctorate compared to your master's in HR? What were the big differences?
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, everyone tells you your doctorate is the most challenging degree you will get. And going through the coursework, I kept thinking, when does this get hard? Like, at what point is this hard? This isn't hard. This is because you're taking such concentrated classes on things that you're so passionate about. When you get your bachelor's degree, you're taking everything. And then your master's, it's kind of concentrated. But the cool thing about your doctorate is it's so focused and so concentrated, even to the point where every paper I wrote in my doc program all led to my dissertation. And so, you kind of pick your topic of research at the beginning and then everything leans in. So really, it was the doctoral program, while it was rigorous, was probably my most meaningful degree. One, I was mature, so I kind of you learn how to do the work. But 2, it was work that I was really interested. Where it got hard was when you started doing your first person research. You're in every other degree, you're doing everybody else's research, but to produce your own research on something you're passionate about. And I got the best advice from someone on my committee who said, this doesn't have to be perfect, get it done. Because once you have your doctorate, you then have the skills to launch any kind of research you want to launch. And so stop getting hung up on it being perfect and get this done. And at that point, I think the imposter syndrome left me. I relaxed and I leaned in and I produced better research than I could have even imagined, because then I really leaned into what my heart was telling me, which is workplace motivation, employee satisfaction. How do we create an environment where people are happier, more productive, more loyal at work? And it took me back to my roots. So it was the most rigorous, but also I can still tell you the feeling when I defended. I walked into the room to defend my research And someone had told me, you're going to never feel as dumb as you will when you go in to defend your research. And I never felt that
Yeah.
because it's my research, it's my stuff. My husband was sitting in the room sweating and I just blew through my research. And when I walked out of the room, I was like, okay, we're done. Put a stamp on it. 10 minutes later, they called me back in the room and said, congratulations, Dr. Ervin. And I mean, it was what I was meant to do.
Yeah, no, I love that journey. And so, what advice would you have for somebody? Because I'm assuming you had a full-time job while you were doing this. You're trying to be a good spouse. You're trying to be a great parent. What advice would you give somebody kind of considering a doctorate program?
I will say build a strong team around you. And it's a group decision. And not just my doctorate, but like every massive decision that impacts the family is a dinner time around the table conversation. We will sit and talk about how it impacts the family and the family dynamics because it's not always the right time for everybody. I did have two little kids. And my kids can still tell you the days that they were at the soccer fields and I had a stack of research with me that I couldn't go to something because I had a doc meeting or something like that. It's a journey for everybody. It's a sacrifice for everyone. I counsel women and coach them today that their spouses weren't all on board with the journey. And so they're really struggling with I have to get up at 7 a.m. on a Sunday and I need to spend all day on Sunday doing work because it's what's going to require. So I will say, make sure it's a group decision, make sure that you have a strong support system, know that you're not alone, reach out to people who've been down the journey. But more importantly, give yourself grace. It took me 7 years to finish my doctorate. When you go through the interview, they're like, people typically get through this in 2 years. That's not true.
Wow.
A massive journey. And when you're trying to juggle full-time work and family and friends and life and everything else, it may take you 4 years, it may take you 7, but it's worth the journey to go on it. So don't let that scare you.
Yeah. So you're at Park University. What made you decide? Oh, I'm going to start a company and kind of leave, be on my own. What was that journey like and that decision making process?
Yeah. Yeah. I finished my doctorate and I was still at Webster. And I was at this crossroads where it was like, am I going to start my own company or am I going to go over into higher ed? And at the time, Park posted this job that literally looked like it was written for me. I mean, I didn't have to tweak anything about my resume. And so I was like, well, universe, okay, let's go to Park. And so 3 years into Park, you have COVID, we had a leadership change, just all kinds of different things. And what I thought I was going to be doing at Park my last year, the university pivoted away from and said, you know what, we don't want to worry about professional development and community education. We want to just lean into traditional, like, let's get butts in seats. We need tuition. And I'll never forget, we at Park signed a client that was going to pay us $24,000 for a 6-month project. And my boss at the time said, Katie, that's lovely, but it's not going to close the massive budget deficit that we have. So we're not going to do that. And I'm like, well, that will close my household deficit. So I'm going to do it on the side. And she was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And so January 1 of 2022, I incorporated Catalyst Development. And then I just kept getting more and more clients on the side. And I would only work like before work or after work and on weekends, or I would take vacation. So I was really intentional about not doing my side hustle during the day. And there was something in me that just kept saying, you know what, things don't feel right here. I'm just not feeling good. And I was talking to my team. They weren't very happy at Park at the time. And again, amazing faculty, amazing students, just not the strongest decisions that I would have made, but they didn't ask my opinion. And when they did, they didn't like my opinion. So in April of 2022, they sent everybody a letter, faculty, staff, everybody, and said, here's an offer that will pay you not to come back July 1. And it's like, well, if you're looking for a sign, here's a contract buyout, take it. So I signed and my team at Park signed and came with me as well. And it's been the biggest gift. It's a journey. I tell people I've never had more pressure on me in my life, but I've also never slept better because I'm living my passion.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the strategy, which what it was the universe or whatever that you would get. You were still employed, but had that side gig, and you were respectful to Park in terms of not taking the time away from them. So you can do your job well. So yeah, I'd love that. What's the biggest surprise you had? Like, oh yeah, I didn't know about this when I gonna have my own business. What was that?
Yeah, it's really something that I think other people will listen to this and be like, yeah, duh, you should have thought of this. But again, my discernment gets me into trouble sometimes because I just jump when it feels right. But the challenge I had was, and now as I reflect back, we've been in business for about 20 months, is I never took a business class. Like, not once. I worked in human resources, I learned accounting, I learned budgeting, I learned that stuff. But my undergrad was soft sciences, my master's was soft sciences, my doctorate was soft sciences. So I never really took business classes. And so I didn't, and then the buyout happened so quick that I didn't dig into all of the really phenomenal entrepreneurship programs that Kansas City has. And quite frankly, they're all over the United States. So I will say that's the biggest misstep that I took is I wish I would have in January when I did the soft launch of Catalyst, even as a side hustle, I wish I would have researched and tapped into the amazing programs that are available out there. Now, 20 months in, because I'm 20 months in, there's some programs I'm not eligible for because I'm too far in. But then also because I don't make $1 million or because I'm not 3 years old, there's other programs that one of these like grow up programs that I'm not eligible for. So I'm kind of in this middle of I fumbled this far, so we're going to get there, but I can't wait until I'm 3 years in so then I can be in some of these. So I will say, if you're thinking about doing this, look at the resources that are in your area because there's so many out there that I was just naive to.
Yeah, that's great advice. So talk a little bit about what you do to help clients in their leadership development space.
So Catalyst Development, we are a intentional skill building company. We tell people we're not why you should be a leader, but how. We're thankful for Corey Shearer. He was the one that introduced us to that phrase. And it's so impactful because he says, trust is not something about why you should build trust, but how you build trust. And I said, oh, I like that. And he said, you should use it. So we do, it's not why you should be a leader, but how. But for us, I really think about all of the lists that HR directors and other leaders in organizations have that they really want to do, but they don't have time to do. I also sat on so many committees in Kansas City the last 5 years where people talked about skills gap in Kansas City. We really need to look at these soft skills and workforce skills and all these things. And I thought, I've been training these for 18 plus years. I have a program that trains it. I have a proven program that's successful that trains it. I have research that backs it up. It just makes a lot of sense. So we're not business consultants. We are actually business partners. So we go in and work with businesses and individuals on real true skill building programs. A lot of them are leadership skills or soft skills or whatever you call them, but it's about raising self-awareness. It's about giving them the tools and resources to build those skills. And everything we do has homework, whether it's a keynote speech that I do, a lot of times a podcast. We give people homework because it's lovely if you just listen and check a box, but it's more impactful if you then practice and do the work.
Yeah, no, I love that. When you do a keynote, like what's the typical homework assignment?
Well, it depends on the topic. And so I will, a lot I get asked to do right now is about imposter syndrome and confidence. And a lot of times it's for women's group. And so we actually created a toolkit called From Chaos to Clarity. And it's really looking at what's important to ourselves. We do a personal SWOT analysis. And, I always talk about, if you picture the guy or gal that's spinning all the plates and, they have 20 plates spinning and they're trying to keep them all going. And that's such a perfect example of what we do in life. We're trying to keep every plate spinning. And so no plate really spins fast or clean. And then we have to, constantly dodging among them. And so this chaos to clarity toolkit allows you to say, you know what? That plate is important for me, but that plate is not important right now. And so you even put things in a parking lot that say, when I have more capacity, I will pick up that plate. But for right now, it's a no for me. And it doesn't mean that it's not important to someone else. It's a no for me. And so I tell people all the time, ask me to do things, ask me to serve on boards, ask me to show up. If I don't have the capacity, I'm really good at saying no, because that clarity is what gets us through the chaos of life. Um, so we'll do things like that. We do time management toolkits, but a lot of times we will pull from toolkits we've already created to go into my keynotes. Sometimes we create new ones. It's fun. I'm going to be a commencement speaker coming up here soon, and going to create a brand new homework assignment for them that they'll get after graduation.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, so I know you're a Patrick Lencioni fan, and part of your work at Catalyst Development, you use the assessment tool Working Genius, which I believe he created. But what made you pick Working Genius? Because there's Colby Index, there's Myers Briggs, there's Predictive Index, there's Culture Index, Enneagram, DISC, there's so many out there. What was your, and explain Working Genius and to the listeners also.
Yeah. And I will say I'm an assessment junkie. I love assessments. I've taken them all. And what I love about, all that you mentioned, those are really behavioral, personality, that are important. Who am I? How do I show up? How do people see me? Things like that. What I love about the Working Genius that's different is it is 80% productivity. And so it's about where we get energy from tasks and where we get energy from work. And it aligns beautifully with my research, because my research is about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. We are more motivated to do certain tasks as opposed to like a job as the whole. And Working Genius just happens to align beautifully with that. And so what Working Genius does is it gives you two geniuses. Those are your piping hot cup of coffee all day, every day. You ask me to do these types of tasks, I will show up. 5 a.m. on a Saturday, hairbrush, makeup on, no problem. We have two competencies that we start with energy, but if we do them too often, they drain us. And then we have two frustrations. Those are your cold cup of coffee that you don't really necessarily love, but you have to do it because you're a professional. So, it's a cold cup of coffee. There's still caffeine in it. We'll take the shot, but we don't want to do it all the time. And what's powerful about that is it helps us understand how we work and the things that we do, but also the bigger impact is on teams, whether it be work teams, volunteer teams. We have a family map, and how we get things done get done quicker and more complete when we go through all of the geniuses. So it's just a immediately applicable tool. It's funny because Jim Bowers, who works at City of Lenexa, he's their chief HR officer. He said to me one time, they love predictive index and all of those. He said, but this one we walked out and could apply immediately. Like it not only is applicable, but they are living it, and it's easy to live it, and it just changes relationships at work. So we do it all the time. It's usually our initial touch point with so many of our clients is doing our program we created called Build a Genius Team.
I'm an assessment junkie also, but I have not done Working Genius. I just did a Predictive Index for the first time. I have done Culture Index, which is actually based in Kansas City. But yeah, so you start a company, and then when did this book idea come about? And I love the title. You might be an asshole, but it might not be your fault. So that's love the title, and I just read it, so it's a great book.
Thank you. Yeah, the book has been in me for years. My husband teases me because I've been kind of taking notes throughout my career. I mean, the book is a journey of Mike, who's a manager who, might be an asshole, but we actually find out it's not his fault. Like he didn't have the training. He didn't have anyone having kind conversations with him. He didn't have the mentors or the coaches that told him that that's bad behavior. And And I saw it too often in my career, and I made my own mistakes. And so kind of always been taking notes. And then when I started Catalyst Development, Emma and Jenna, who work with me and for me, who I couldn't do things without, Emma said, we need the book. Like, get the book written. You've been talking about writing this book ever since I've known you. Write the book. And it's not that easy. It's terrifying to write a book. It's putting yourself out there. It's one thing to write a dissertation that they publish and put in a library at K-State that people may or may never read. But to write a book and to put everything out there is terrifying. And so it was a journey for me. And then I met Elena Mueller, who is such a gift, not just to Kansas City, but to the world. And she said, you know what, Katie, not everyone's going to love it. Just write it. This is for you. And there are going to be people that are going to learn a lot from it. And the people that don't let it bother you. And that was kind of the getting over the hump piece that I needed to produce the book. And it'll be a year old on April 21st. And I will say, other than my children and my marriage and my surrogacy journeys and all those kind of things, it's probably one of the best things that I've ever produced. I'm really, really proud of it.
I love it. I mean, obviously you're a fan of Patrick Lencioni, and it's that, his style of writing that combines the storytelling with actionable insights, homework, and it was a great story. Question, and I know, there. Mike, I believe, is probably in his 20s, his 30s, kind of during the formative period of the book. What do you think about senior executives that are assholes in terms of their leadership journey and their willingness to embrace, and really be reflective and look at it? And I would just love your opinion in that space, because obviously emerging leaders, 20s and 30s, probably are more receptive to learning because they've never been a leader, where somebody that's at a C level, they say, well, what can you teach me? I'm a CFO or a CMO or a chief people officer.
It's funny because early in Catalyst Development, and even kind of recently, there's been times where I've sat across from the CEO or the executive director or whatever, and I'm like, oh, you do not have a growth mindset. Like, you are an asshole and you don't care. But they'll sit there and tell you, like, the feedback we're getting from employees is they're not happy and they're not engaged and all of these kind of things. And I know really quickly whether we want to work with an organization or not, depending on how the CEO sees that feedback, because a lot of times I will say more often than not, it's indicative of the quote unquote leadership team. How the leadership team is treating employees is what the culture is going to look like and how people are going to be engaged or disengaged at work. And so when I ask the leadership team, like, what do you do for your own professional development? What do you do for your personal development? And they're like, oh, I'm good. I'm good. We need it for our people. We need it for them. And it's like, so you do nothing. You don't have a coach. You do nothing. And they're like, nope, I'm good. It's like, oh, you think you've checked a box and that you don't have to practice learning anymore. And for me, those are the type of people that I don't want to work with or work for. And so I think the really, really great leaders and the ones I've talked to and learned from, they are always learning. They are not mastering anything. They're really good at what they do, but they also understand that you can learn from everyone. And they also know that they don't have to be the smartest people in the room. I worked for a guy one time that if he wasn't the smartest person in the room, he would remove you from the room. He wouldn't leave and find another room so he could grow. He just wanted to get anyone who might challenge them out of the room. And his organization is dying. And no matter how many people will tell him that, he will just keep removing them from the room. And it's like, oh, okay, well, it's not going to be a surprise when we open up the business journal or whatever, and that organization's not here anymore. Or when he eventually gets let go, which is, he's not willing to put the mirror up in front of his face.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've just seen so many senior executives that not even care about growing, really. So it's the growth mindset you talked about. Katie, I'd like to help two groups of people. One's that person coming out of college, going to get their first job. What advice would you have for them as they begin their career journey and getting their first job?
I think the most important thing for us to learn early in career is everything happens for a reason and learn the lesson from it. The career journey is not a clean, straight path. I talk about it all the time. I mean, we think, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to, start as an accounting assistant and then I'm going to become this and then I'm going to be a county manager and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to eventually sit in the CFO chair. And there's going to be a journey that takes you where you're going to either end up in the CFO chair or realize I don't want to be anywhere near that. And it's okay. What success looks like to you is the most important. Early in my career, I would always have people say, you need to go into the office and you need to demand this. And it's like, no, what you really need to do is you need to take ownership of your career. You need to become partners with your leaders, share with them your desires and what you want to learn, and be open to feedback and be open to opportunities. Because also early in our career, we don't, my kids won't agree with this sometimes, but when you're 22 to 25 years old, you don't always know what's best. So being open to other people to help you along that way is really important.
I think research shows that the brain doesn't fully develop till 25 years old, and probably for males longer than that. Well, and since you're an expert and you're built a whole company around it, you'll really help this next group. So once you become a leader, and you don't have to have people under you to be a leader, as we know, but once you get people that you're responsible for and get that promotion, going from an individual contributor to a manager or whatever the title is, what advice would you have for them as they start their leadership journey and being responsible for people?
Yeah, you said it right there. I mean, just remember it's about the people. All of our programs that we do talk about leadership at all levels, and you don't need a title to have impact and influence. There's two things that I recommend, especially new leaders. I love the book The Motive by Patrick Lencioni because it talks about two type of leaders. Are you in it for the title or for the people? And so really reflecting on that. And then Simon Sinek has a really great talk that he does, manager versus leader. And he talks about going from being in charge to taking care of people in your charge. And so, how do we support people? How do we build deep relationships to let people know that we care about them, that we support them, that we're going to set them up for success? I will tell you in my career where I've had the most success is where I have surrounded myself with people that are smarter than me and given them the tools and resources and care that they need to thrive. They make me look good and they make the company look good, and not to be afraid of that. Because I think often we get a title and we think we now have to be the smartest person in the room. We have to know all the answers. We got to do all the things. We can't make mistakes or missteps or whatever. And that's not true. You can't do it all. You can't be it all. And so being willing to do that, and then remembering what it was like when you were the one in the grind. I think as we move up our career ladders in the C-suite, it's like, well, head down, do the work, blah. And it's like, oh, do you forget where you were 20 years ago when you're
Right.
looking up thinking, do they not realize what we're doing? But we get so detached from that. And so constantly not anchoring yourself, but pulling yourself back to remember it's about the people and what they do. And we talk about the platinum rule: treat people the way they want to be treated, not the way you want to be treated. And as a leader, we have to flex to them and not expect them to flex to us. And it doesn't mean we allow them to get away with everything. We still have accountability, we still have authority, but more importantly, finding ways to influence and impact them. And I'll put a period on this by saying a true leader creates future leaders, and they inspire people to step up and do great things. And I think to me, that is really what a leader is.
That's great advice, Kate. Love it. You've been a pleasure to talk to. I'm so glad that Mark Schaefer introduced us, but I really enjoyed the conversations. So thank you for coming on the Corporate Couch today.
Thanks for having me.
I really had a great time talking with Katie. Her and I just met one other time before that. We had coffee, but I knew of her. And what a great title of her book, You Might Be an Asshole. I mean, really, and it's about leadership.
And it brings it right out there, doesn't it?
Yeah, combined storytelling with actionable insights. But I knew it was going to be a fun episode when I said, what one thing would surprise people that know you fairly well. She goes, yeah, I was a surrogate mother twice. I delivered twins, and who are now 12, and then I did it again and that baby is now 8 years old. Interesting. So I picked my jaw off the floor and started.
And I could tell just when I was listening to it for the first time, it's almost like you just stopped and closed your notebook and put your pen down, put your microphone away, and said, "This interview's done. Where can you go from there?"
You heard my jaw hit the desk.
I heard your jaw hit the floor. It was. I've never known a surrogate, and I've certainly never known anybody that would lead with that. So
exactly.
Like, where do you go from there? But you carried on for another 50 minutes after that, and it turned out to be a great interview.
Yeah, I just knew I could joke around with her, when some professor called her at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, called all the class, and she explained that whole story, which was fun. I said, well, did it wake up your boyfriend too, who's now her husband? So she was a good sport about that too. But I just love her career journey, and I don't know, woo-woo is the right word, but she talked about listening to the universe, and
she was all over that.
Yeah, she was in Indianapolis, and
no such thing as a coincidence.
Yeah, she had to leave her job for a little bit. I mean, took not a sabbatical, but a break, because her grandfather, who had a big influence on her life, was dying, and she was at his side, and promised the grandfather that that she would move back to Kansas City, and then without consulting her husband, by the way. But yeah, she's just a big believer in listening to whether you call it a God whisper or a universe whisper. And she made different career decisions like that. When she got her doctorate, to start the program, she was meeting with somebody on a Monday, and they said, and it was a K-State doctorate program in education, specifically focused on leadership. And the woman said, yeah, you'd be great for this program. It starts Wednesday, and this is Monday. So she got into her doctorate program.
Oh, I think I'll start a doctorate day after tomorrow.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's so much great lessons. I thought, she just had a very interesting career. HR, the first part of it, and then about 11 years in the higher education space. And then, talk about having a side hustle and then starting her own business. And, she self-admits, the one thing I didn't have, I had a lot of education in soft skills, obviously undergraduate, master's in HR, and then the doctorate in education focused on leadership. But she said, I had no business classes. I started a business without having gone through finance, accounting, name it. So just very interesting, and just a joy to talk to. So I was very honored to have her on the podcast.
She was definitely a character. One of the stories that she talked about was when she was in the hospitality industry, working for a hotel, in HR, but working for a hotel. And hospitality has traditionally has an incredible turnover rate with their employees. So she said that they had 172% turnover rate, annual turnover rate with their employees, which means that you're hiring people faster than they're leaving almost. And she implemented a program that turned that around, went from 172% to less than 40% turnover rate. And she said that she did this, I wrote this down, without pay increases. So she didn't pay them more, but they developed a program to show their employees that they care about them. And that's amazing that you think, is that all you need for a management, is to give a message to your subordinates that you actually care about them. I think that was amazing, and that just shows what kind of work that she can do.
Joe, what insight would you want to give our audience today on leadership?
We are going back to that great philosopher named Stephen Wright, who one time said this. He said, "There's a fine line between a numerator and a denominator, but only a fraction of the people will find this funny.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.